All right, and we are live. Welcome, Prospect Live viewers out there on YouTube, out there on Periscope, however you might be looking on your phones, whatever it might have you. Just an impromptu draft chat tonight. Want to get into a little bit, talking a little 2020 draft. You can, of course, now hear myself in the background because I'm a schmuck. But I'll introduce those that are joining me tonight. That is Brian Sakowski of perfectgame.org. He is PG's national scouting supervisor. You might be familiar with him from some of our videos. And then, of course, one of my Prospect Live colleagues who's, branched out, is doing some other work, some other places as well, Roto Fanatic in particular. And that is Diego Solares. Deegs, what's going on, gentlemen? How are you?
Good, man. Thank you for having me on this. I know it was kind of like a last minute thing, but I'm pretty excited. This is kind of the first time I've been live anywhere to talk about the draft this year, so I'm kind of fired up.
Well, it's the first time I've ever actually had to run a live stream, so this should actually be quite an adventure. It's going to be a lot of fun. Brian, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, man. Good. We're getting ready to go, man. We're almost at a week. Everybody's finishing reports. Everybody's putting together their boards. It's going to be an exciting next 10 days or so.
Absolutely. And it seems like there's been a lot of stuff sort of heating up in terms of draft talk over the last, I don't know, I'd say few nights, week plus. It seems like things have really started to pick up. There's been rumors, regarding the top three, some movement there. I'll kick it over to Brian first. Is there a possibility? It's a question that we got pre-show. Is there a distinct possibility that the Orioles do go Asa Lacy at 2, or do you still think it's going to be Austin Martin?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a chance. Not knowing exactly what the Orioles draft board reads, it's hard to say with any sort of certainty. But yeah, I think that Lacy's the best pitcher in the class, and I think most teams have it that way. And if you don't think that Austin Martin is better long term than Lacy, then you should take Lacy. I've been saying the same thing to Tigers fans who have asked me similar questions, like, hey, if the Tigers have Lacy graded out higher, they should take Lacy. But we'll see what happens, obviously.
Diego, what do you think ends up happening at top 3, we'll say?
Yeah, I mean, I think Torco's 1. That's kind of locked in. But I've seen a lot of people on Twitter that are kind of saying, like, oh, well, the Orioles probably shouldn't take Lacy because Grayson Rodriguez, D.L. Hall, they have a bunch of other guys. But just doesn't make sense to me. Like Brian said, if they think he's truly the best player, if they think long-term value-wise he's going to be better than Austin Martin, then why would you not pull the trigger? I mean, I know I saw it in our recent mock draft. We had Lacy going too, and I kind of think there's a chance that happens just because he's a lefty and he's obviously the best pitcher in this class on pretty much everyone's board. So, yeah, I mean, if Baltimore thinks he's better, then you can't fault him for taking him over Martin.
Yeah, and I know that's what we mocked out on Prospects Live in the mock we put out today, and I think it's a distinct possibility. I have heard folks that are, associated with the Baltimore organization that have said things, along the lines. They were early on Lacy over Hancock. One of the first people I knew that was Lacy over Hancock and was like adamant about it and gave me really good reasons that kind of changed my thought process on that. But all right, good stuff. Shout out to Dusty Colorado for still showing up like 2 years, like with this joke running. I love it. I think Wander Javier would obviously be the number 1 pick in this draft. Even if he broke both of his legs and was never able to walk again. I think that's probably what the case would be, Dusty. Just to get that out of the way. I want you to know I'm with you, bud. Is there any chance that the Tigers pass on Torque and take Lacy? You kind of already addressed this, Brian. Do you think there's any possibility here? Percentages, what would you put the percentage that Lacy's the number 1 pick?
I mean, I know Kylie McDaniel in his most recent mock did like a percentage breakdown, and I forget exactly what he said, but I think it was like 85% Torque and 15% Lacy, and like that. I mean, I don't even know if I'd give it 15%, but yeah, I mean, sure, I think there's a possibility. I would just be pretty surprised.
All right.
Yeah, I'd probably say sub 10% too. I just really hope. Yeah. For every Tigers fan ever that they don't pass on Spencer Torkelson, but I don't know. I'm not going to be surprised by anything, I guess.
But it's one of those drafts that honestly, if we look back in like 3-4 years, there's like 8-9 guys in play now, like legitimately, and maybe even more, that we could look back and be like, oh, that guy should have been the number 1 pick,
Yeah.
it's a good year to be drafting early in the top, the top round and have a lot of money. I mean, quite frankly, some of these teams are going to dominate the draft. That's a question I wanted to kick it over to Brian as well. Just in terms of taking a look at bonus pools, do you think there's anybody that could legitimately make some big splashes in the second round? Some of these teams that, pick early in the first, have a competitive balance pick, and then a decent second round pick. Some of them even have, multiple comp round picks. So there's a few teams that are drafting, 4 times in the top 60 something picks. So
yeah. I mean, I think someone will. Finding out who it is we'll have to wait till next week. But I don't think there's any chance that someone doesn't try and get creative in some way. As far as maybe that's where Landon Knack comes into play as the best senior in the country, as a guy who's a legitimate prospect, but is still a senior and is still going to save you money against the pool. So, maybe that's where he goes in the 30s, and all of a sudden you're saving $800,000 or something like that. And you can get even more creative, and maybe a prep drops. Yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out who that is. That's one of the like annual most interesting things, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Diego, what are your thoughts right now? And have you heard anything, in terms of whispers and, stuff that might potentially happen with bonus pools, guys bumping down?
So I think it's actually interesting that the Orioles have the second overall pick. They have the first pick in the comp round, and then obviously they have the second pick in the second round. Should they potentially take somebody at number 2 that they could underslot? Maybe they go big time and with that comp round and then get another guy second overall. I don't know. I think having 3 top 40 picks is interesting. So definitely kind of watch what the Orioles have going on there. But yeah, like Brian said, I think there's usually a team that kind of comes out and dominates the draft in a way. We saw the Diamondbacks do it last year just because they had way more picks than everybody else. So it'll be interesting. I think this draft, with everything going on, 5 rounds, it being an extremely talented draft, is going to be like so fun to watch.
Yeah, and just reviewing the bonus pools real quick here too. The Orioles, up there with 13 million. Tigers just a slot below, a little bit over 13. Oh, actually, the Orioles are close to 14. Royals 12.5, Marlins 12. Marlins are sneaky, man, because they have, I think, a competitive balance pick in the second competitive balance round, and they pick 40. Really
they do.
See what they do there, Got a good question here on YouTube that I want to kick off to the group. I'll start off with Brian. What's the likelihood that Jared Jones can crack the back end of the first? So he added a curveball that does look solid, yada yada yada. What are your thoughts on Jones at the back end of the first? Do you think it's a possibility? I haven't heard anything like that at this point. I mean, certainly he's a talented prep arm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to look at more, and this is something that I think that we as a collective need to do more, is look less at where somebody goes and look more at what they end up getting paid. So do I think that Jared Jones is going to go in the late 20s, which is technically the late first? No, I don't think he will. Do I think that he'll get paid roughly what that equates to, or pardon me, that's not a real word, it equals financially, or even like late teens type of money, but get it later on with someone's second pick? Yes. So I think it's an important distinction. Like, do I think he'll get paid like a top 30 player? Potentially, sure. I don't know if he'll go in the top 30 picks though.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think so either. Yeah. I'm just kind of bouncing off what he said. Do I think Jared Jones is probably a first round talent? I mean, yeah, maybe, but I think he's probably going to get paid somewhere in the comp round. I think the data we've seen coming out with his curveball has been kind of interesting. It's been kind of a decent spin rate on it with all the TrackMan stuff that he's been posting on Twitter. Sure. And obviously we know he throws heat, but I don't know. We'll see. I don't know how risk averse some teams are going to be with a prep right-hander throwing 98 to 100 miles an hour and willing to pay him that much money. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely think he's a back end of the first round talent, but just kind of what Brian said, I don't think that he's going to get paid that kind of money.
All right, let's jump to the next question here from our buddy Mason McCray over at Prospects 365. Where does Dylan Cruz go? We know he's a Dylan Cruz truther. Brian, I'll let you handle this one. Kick it back over to Diego. Were you hearing Cruz?
Cruz is just like, it's one of those wild names in this cycle that he may be like the first member of the 2020 draft class that I ever saw or like ever remember seeing and evaluating when he was like 14. But anyway, fast forward. I think that he's going to be in a similar situation like we talked about with Jones, where he's got a chance to get, first round money, but I don't think it's going to come in the first round. I think that's a guy you see a team's comp pick or a team's early to mid second round pick, a team that maybe saved a little bit of money in the first, whoever fits those qualifications on draft night, that's where Cruz, I think, will end up.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be a team's first selection in the draft, kind of what Brian said. So I think you're looking second round, probably maybe in even the second comp round for Dylan Cruz.
Kind of an interesting pick potentially in the second round, especially, if somebody goes with more of a high floor college guy in the first. All right, next question. Does Nick Bitsko fall out of the first round, or is there a big chance that he goes to college? What do you think, Diego? I'll start with you. Personally, I'm going to err on the side of I think he's probably going to the top 20 picks. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think he's probably going somewhere between 15 to 18. I don't think he falls even out of the top 20, like you said. I know there's a lot of uncertainties with Nick Bitsko because obviously he reclassed and he's a high school guy up there that didn't get to play. But I still think teams saw him. Like, it's not like just because he wasn't a 2020 guy, teams haven't been keeping their tabs on this guy. And I mean, it's undeniable. I mean, it's the upside is undeniable with Nick Bitsko. So I think someone takes a chance on him probably somewhere between 15, 18. And I don't think he gets to college. I think he's gonna sign.
Brian, what do you think?
So, like, the latest on Bitsko, and this just weirdly enough, I talked about it today with someone, is he is not, like, averse to going to UVA. He didn't reclassify up strictly because he wants to get drafted and sign. He's going to set a substantial figure financially, and whatever that is, whatever that number ends up being, he's not going to take less than that. Like, he'll go to Virginia if he doesn't get the money he wants. So that's going to be an interesting thing to follow, is like if somehow, some way Virginia gets, Mike Vassell and Nate Savino and, Nick Bitsko to campus, something like that, something ridiculous. But like, it's just something to keep an eye on. I agree with Diego that I think that guy's going to go in the top 20 picks and be signed there and end up in pro ball. But like, there is still something to watch there to see if the number ends up being too high and if he heads to school.
And I'll just go back like a couple of weeks. I don't think that's something like we joked around a little bit because he was a UVA commit, when we went over him, maybe even off air. And I think we both felt, and I know you're more plugged into this stuff obviously than I am, that, I guess there's a chance, but we felt pretty strongly like he'd go into the draft. I mean, the fact that you're saying this today, though, it means maybe there's maybe it's smoke, maybe it's leverage, but it's interesting. And UVA has a history of pulling these guys on the campus. Yeah. With that said, it's a perfect segue. I wanted to go into a question that we got on Twitter prior to the show. I thought it was a really good question from SF Draft Talk. That's Brian Oreca. Where do you think Nate Savino and Robert Moore would have fit in this year's draft had they been eligible first rounders? Who goes the highest and in what range? Brian, I'll kick it over to you, and then Diego, you can jump into it.
This is, and we talked off air before the show. This is like, I think this was the best question we got.
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's two different guys, and you have to consider the potential like developmental trajectories of each. So like, I saw Bobby Moore play in March for Arkansas. And like Bobby Moore, noticeably more physical, obviously in the 2 or 3 months that he was on campus at Arkansas, he didn't, become an entirely new person physically, but he was more advanced physically, and that was impacting his game in a positive way in the way he's driving the ball. So now you think about if he were draft eligible, did he make those same strength gains that he's made in reality? Like, if yes, then I think you're talking about him as far up as ahead of Carson Tucker and ahead of Ed Howard as far as prep shortstops go. Wow. If he didn't, and he's still a little bit undersized and this, that, the other thing, then maybe he's behind those guys. And Savino's, I don't even know what Nate Savino's stuff is like right now because, as soon as he said he was going to UVA, I totally lost track of him. So just going by the circuit, going by last summer, I think he'd be up there with Abel and Kelly and Bitsko as far as jockeying for who's going to be the first prep arm taken.
Savino got buried in the UVA file, and
Like that's
Brian
for
Castro
2023 now. Yeah, that's for 2022 now. Or
Vassals in
whatever.
there. Diego, what do you think, man? Where would you slot in Savino and Moore? Do you agree with Brian?
Yeah. I think Moore would definitely be up there as best prep middle infielders. I'd probably still take Ed Howard over him just because I'm a big Ed Howard guy. But I think Savino being like unquestionably the best lefty prep arm would definitely put him in the conversation with Abel Kelly and obviously now Bitsko. So I think Savino would for sure go in the first round, with Moore probably being back end of the first kind of guy. But I mean, definitely, I think Brian made a really good point with the Arkansas thing, right? Because he obviously went to campus and he was in that D1 program, getting bigger, getting stronger, and just learning more than what he would have been doing had he not gone to college early. So definitely a really good question, but it'll be interesting to see where these guys slot in 3 years down the road, in terms of the 2023 MLB draft, which is probably shaping up to be like ridiculously loaded given how many guys might make it to college.
Yeah, no, it's true. And cough, cough, Kevin Parada, go to campus so I can watch you. I need some talent to watch. I need something from the COVID that came of this. That's perfect. All right, I really like this question too. I've seen plenty of talk about teams drafting a college arm in the mid-first round with the intent of using him out of the pen in a shortened MLB season. Any legs to that? Brian, I'll kick it over to you. Obviously, there's some legs on the MLB season being a possibility. Talks have picked up. And this is a hot button issue. I think it's a possibility. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, you have to balance, value now versus longer term value there. But if you're a team who's drafting in the middle of the first round and you think that you are, an eighth inning guy away from being a World Series contender, then sure, go ahead. Take Garrett Crochet and bring him up and put him in the pen. Take whoever's there, whoever's available. But at the same time, if you're not, then that feels like it would just be absurd. Like, take the player you think is going to be best for you long term. Maybe that's the same guy, but no, I just think that unless you're like, okay, well, if we get a lockdown setup guy, we're gonna win the World Series, then I don't really see any value to that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything you said there. I think it is interesting that maybe not, obviously not in the first, maybe not even the second or the third, but whatever team drafts Burl Caraway later on, potentially using him as that lefty, coming out of the pen that'd be super interesting. I think that'd be something that some teams might definitely play around with.
I see. I kind of wonder if you have some of these guys that, maybe go in the third, fourth, even fifth round with big stuff, right? And as a starter, maybe you would have tried him out for a couple of years and they project as maybe like a roll 40 guy there. I don't know. Maybe I'd take a chance on that guy, Maybe he's probably going to sign, I guess, for money. And I don't know if this is the best comp. I think I just make Joe Boyle a reliever, right? If you're playing a ton of games in a short window of time and you need to keep guys healthy and maybe rest is a bigger factor, why don't you just throw that guy, streamline him a little bit? Because I think the quality of some of these arms that are going to get up and get experience, if we have 45-man rosters or whatever with taxi squads, there's going to be a lot of guys that wouldn't have gotten, active service time this year that are going to get full service time. Right. So I think it's going to screw a lot of stuff up to begin with, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Kind of interesting stuff. Here's a good one from Clint Scholes. Do you think the rumor about Mason Wynn to Kansas City is real? Pitcher or shortstop? What my take is on this, both. But Brian, what do you think?
I mean, I had not heard Win to Kansas City there. I don't know if Clint there is referring to early in the first or potentially later on as an overpay. I would be shocked by the former and less surprised by the latter. But yeah, I mean, it's as far as pitcher or position player, I think that's to be determined. I think he's talented enough to where you don't have to make that determination yet. It's we've talked about him a lot. It's rare athleticism. It's rare arm talent on the mound that plays defensively, and it's a pretty twitchy swing that is got some strength to it. And it can go both ways, man. Honestly, I don't know which one you want preferred. I think it's a little bit louder on the mound right now, but that doesn't mean it'll always be that way. So yeah, he's one of the more interesting ones this year.
Yeah, I also had absolutely no idea what the rumor to him to Kansas City was, but I agree with what you guys said. I think there's definitely the potential for him to be, a two-way guy. Personally, right now I like him more on the mound, but that doesn't mean that he can't play short or anything. Obviously, moving forward, so definitely one of the more intriguing guys in the draft, just off pure athleticism, arm talent. Flashing off some pretty impressive sliders late October last year, but. I don't know. I think it'd be super interesting if he went to campus and played at Arkansas. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think that would be just him and Robert Moore up the middle would be like kind of electric.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too with the Royals in particular is they got 3 picks in the top 41. They're picking at 4, of course. They pick again at 32, and they pick again at 41, and they have the 3rd biggest bonus pool. So there might be one of those teams that can pull somebody down and flex their might a little bit. So could be interesting. All right, let's go to a Tigers question here. We've had a few. Last week, there were rumors that the Tigers want a shortstop at 38. Is that a mistake considering the quality of the arms that will be available, or is it smart because of the quantity of arms available? Brian, you're in Michigan. You know about baseball. I'm going to ask you.
I mean, I don't really buy that the Tigers have let out that who they're targeting at 38. Like in and of itself, I don't think that they know who they're targeting at 38 yet. No one knows because we don't know exactly who's going to go with the first 37 picks. So I mean, do I think that the Tigers have maybe identified a handful of players that coincidentally are left side infielders that they could be interested in / available at 38? Absolutely. Sure. And they should do the same due diligence that they're doing at 1. Like I've said all along, if they have Lacey graded out ahead of Torkelson, they should take Lacey. And at the same time, if they get down to 38 and they have Alika Williams or someone graded out higher than Jared Schuster or Bryce Jarvis or Nick Swinney or whoever happens to be there at the time, then yes, they should take them. But I don't think that I don't think that they're like saying, okay, well, here's who we're going to take at 38. Like I just don't think that that's a possibility yet.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think it is worth noting that this shortstop class as a whole really isn't too great. I mean, outside of Ed Howard, probably Nick Lofton, maybe Alika Williams or Gage Workman. If you think he's a shortstop, there's probably not it's not the deepest group.
I like Westberg.
Yeah, or Westberg too.
For sure.
Yeah, it's not the deepest group. I also think that drafting, per need is kind of dumb. I think you just take the best player available, and probably at 38. Obviously, we have no idea how the draft's going to shake out, but at 38, if a guy like Bryce Jarvis or Clayton Beeter or Jared Schuster, somebody's there and they're available, I don't think the Tigers should pass on that guy just to take a shortstop because they want a shortstop.
Do the Tigers have a position where they could actually block any prospect at any position?
I mean,
as a Detroiter,
no.
I mean, like in Detroit. I've seen on the roster that legitimately could probably keep Torque down in a world where the best players just went immediately to the majors. I don't know.
I mean, like the only like non-replacement level everyday player is like Nico Goodrum or something, or like Matt Boyd. Like that's kind of it.
Yeah,
Boyd, of course. Okay.
Yeah, he's like a super utility guy. There's a couple relievers, Yeah, exactly. All right, let's go on to another question here. Prep class. Is Jordan Walker the first prep corner infielder off the board? Where does he fit best and why? And I'll add in, is Jordan Walker even off the board? Is Jordan Walker, is he drafted or is he going to school? Brian.
Okay.
Brian, you can go first.
I've been going
First of all, hi, Mr. Walker. Thank you for the comment. I hope you're doing well. Miss seeing you guys at PG events. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I think Walker's certainly got a chance to be the first prep corner infielder off the board. I don't know where he's going to go. I think that as a guy who's as young as he is and is still kind of growing into just how monstrous his physicality is and has a chance to be, he needs to go to an org that can develop him more than maybe some other orgs. And I think that you're looking at the back of the first round at a handful of those right then. But yeah, I think the upside is monstrous with Walker. We've said that at PG for a long time. This is a guy who has the upside of like Chris Bryant, And not to mention the fact that, he's also a really talented pitcher who, up until not all that long ago, we thought had a chance to be a real two-way player. But he's concentrated more on the bat. But with that being said, it's obviously the background is important on Walker too. He's committed to Duke. He's an extraordinarily high-end academic student. That's extremely important to him. Both of his parents are highly educated people. The education aspect is something that potentially means more in his situation than it does in a lot of other people's. And that's not a knock on other people. It's just that's the type of family that is. So I think that there's still a decent chance that Walker ends up at Duke just because of that educational sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, first corner outfielder or first corner infielder, pardon me, off the board from the prep side, I think that's probably realistic.
Yeah, so in my personal, corner infield rankings, I have Walker 2 behind Torque. And obviously Torque's a college guy, so I think it's very possible he's the first corner infielder taken. In terms of like upside, I mean 6'5", 220 moves well for being that big and being that young. I mean, if he goes in the back of the first to the Dodgers or the Yankees, it's going to be pretty scary. And if he makes it to campus, you mentioned the high academics and the high pedigree with that, and Duke being obviously a great school, but also being an incredibly analytically inclined college program. Mm-hmm. Getting him to campus and further developing that hit tool to tap into more of that power. I mean, you're looking at a guy, if he makes it to Duke in 2023, could be top 10, top 5, top 10. I mean, the upside is ridiculously high with Jordan Walker.
Agree. Yeah, and I think all the reasons that you guys have laid out, good snag on that, Brian, by the way, know who it was. But one of the reasons I want him to go to Duke, so I can go and watch him when he plays some road games at BC. All right, what are your opinions on Freddie Zamora? Interesting talent, Brian. What do you think about Zamora right now? It's a guy that could land in the back end of the second round. Are we looking third round?
Yeah,
he's got obviously a very strange situation this season, and then everything else piled on top of it.
Right. Zamora coming into the season was kind of seen as like a 20s to 30s type of maybe back end of the first type of talent. Tore his ACL like right as the season started or right before the season started, right then. And then obviously like the shutdown happened anyway. So,
and I believe he was suspended as well.
Yeah, there was
right before he got injured too.
Yeah.
So there was some of that as well.
Yeah, so like I think that on the talent level and obviously trusting in the fact that he's going to fully recover athletically from his knee injury, if you're trusting in that, then yeah, I think he could be in play even higher than what we're talking about as a guy who maybe he's a team second pick there in the mid-second round or so. But yeah, like as far as profile goes, it's a guy you think can really be a true defender at short. He's shown the ability to kind of have a good approach. There's some punch to the bat. I think he'd be right up there with Lofton and all those guys that we talk about as far as the best shortstops in the class.
Yeah, from a pure talent standpoint, I mean, Freddie Zamora right up there with anybody. Putting everything like in a perfect world in a vacuum, had he not gotten hurt, had he not gotten suspended, you're probably looking at a guy who, I mean, rivals Ed Howard as the top shortstop in the class. Probably goes in the first round potentially. I don't know. But I don't know. I think maybe a team takes a shot on him. It'd be kind of weird for him to go back as a senior to Miami. Dealing with everything with the suspension, with the injury and everything. I think it might just be best if he gets drafted to go and just see what happens. But could be a guy that 4 or 5 years down the road, depending on what team he goes to and how everything pans out, we look back and go, wow, this team got Freddie Zamora in the second, third, fourth round. It's big time steal just because he's definitely talented enough.
Next question. Is there a world where Parada doesn't make it to campus? Answer is no, Trevor Huth.
Yeah, Trevor Huth.
Answer that.
Sorry, Brian.
Is there a world where Parada gets drafted? Signed?
Yeah. I mean, if there's a world that exists where he is offered the amount of money that he would agree to sign for, then sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily likely, but yeah, I mean, sure. You never say no unless a kid really like legitimately pulls himself out of the draft, which Parada hasn't done. So yeah, I'm sure there's always a chance.
Therein lies the rub. All right. I want to go to a question here from Joe Doyle, our colleague, your colleague as well, Diego. Anthony Cervedio not being talked about enough in terms of talent. What's your take, Diego? I'll tell you what mine is. I saw a bit of Servieto down the Cape, but you go first.
I think when we did our draft ranks at Roto Fanatic, I think Joe had him somewhere in the 10 to 12 range. Probably should have been a little higher. Really good at Ole Miss this past year. Has great hair too, by the way. But I think that he's, I definitely think in draft circles, he's a guy that I haven't really seen much of or heard much of, and I think we're probably underrating him a little bit.
I like him defensively. I think he's a smart ball player. I didn't think there was a ton of impact in the bat, like he can hit. But I mean, I didn't see an everyday bat personally. Brian, what are your thoughts on Servieto?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the shutdown he's one of those guys that it kind of dinged more than it should have in some sense, in that like he'd been playing second base because Greg Kessinger was there, and he'd never been a real power guy. Like even in the summer leagues, even the Cal Ripken League and then the Cape, it's a contact guy.
Yeah.
So he moves over to shortstop and takes to it pretty well and shows off more arm strength than I think anybody thought he had. So we're talking about a higher end defender than we thought. And he's hitting for some more power this spring. So if that continued and we have, an SEC schedule of him hitting the ball with more impact, and like he's doing it on Friday nights against SEC starters and he's hitting some bombs and he's hitting some doubles, then yeah, I think he would absolutely be higher than where he is right now. But just in the sense that we don't have much of a track record with the current profile of that player, like I think that's kind of why we're a little bit lower, just out of an exercise of caution, so to speak.
All right. Agree. Like the answers. All right, guys. Next question that we got actually on Twitter prior to the show. Have you heard any rumors with the Rangers? He mentions a couple names. Hassel, Abel, Hendrick, college guy, kind of leaves it wide open. Brian, what are you hearing with the Rangers?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're going to stray from their kind of usual approach, and that's, tools are important. They're going to have an option there at 14. I think that, one of any number of different situations can happen before them, but I think they're going to have their option of like maybe one of the top tier of arms slips, or like either the pick of the litter of like the second tier. I think they'll have their choice of a couple of prep bats who are going to be interesting. I don't think they'll all be there at 14, but 2 or 3 of them maybe. So it's going to be interesting with them. I wish I could give you like a specific rumor as far as I've heard the Rangers are taking blank, but I haven't.
Yeah.
I think it could be college arm who slips, or, best prep bat available.
Yeah, that's what I kind of feel with the Rangers, because I know when we were doing the mock, it was difficult to sort of peg down where rumors, even things that you hear out there, doesn't seem to be a lot of smoke around them. Right. But they seem like they're sort of in that position in that mid-first round with the Cubs and the Red Sox and the Diamondbacks there at 18, where if they want to, they could potentially be in a great position to grab whoever falls. Tripping over my words. Or the Cardinals, who consistently always grab whoever falls. It seems like that's their MO. Diego, what do you think?
Ralph, who did we have them taking in the mock that just dropped?
I think we had Austin Hendrick drop.
I think that would be – that was something we were talking about in the Discord the other day, and I think that would be really interesting because he's a guy that a lot of people I've seen, even listening to podcasts and like reading stuff, that has kind of been dropping just because people have concerns of the hit tool, him being able to actually hit for enough power. And I think that would be super intriguing if he dropped all the way down to 14, because obviously that's a guy that, maybe like a month ago we had been hearing top 10 rumors about him going over Robert Hassel and stuff like that. And I think kind of the tides have turned, in terms of what people on Twitter and stuff have been saying. So if Austin Hendricks drops to the Rangers at 14, I'd be very intrigued by that.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like we had heard for so long that he was very much in play at 7 with Pittsburgh. Now I seem to hear a ton of rumors, ton of stuff connected to Kjerstad. I want to ask you that, Brian. Have you heard anything with Pittsburgh? Is Hendrick still in play there? I think the last mock that you guys did over at PG, that's actually what you had was Hendrick going 7. And I think that's what you actually picked at our mock draft for Prospects Live, was Hendrick at 7, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I will make no secret about the fact that I'm maybe Austin Hendrick's biggest, supporter as far as within this like draft interweb that we have or whatever. Like I'm a big Austin Hendrick fan. I was really a believer in the bat after seeing the adjustments he made following PDP and into East Coast Pro. That really made me a believer in it. I think that the rumors to him at 7 are warranted for several different reasons, but not necessarily like inside intel that Pittsburgh's on him at 7. But yeah, I mean, we still have him ahead of Hassel on our board. We still have him number 2 prep in the class behind Veen. So I think that 7 to, like you said, 14, and maybe he keeps sliding. Maybe the prep bats slide further than we expect him to. So 7 to 15, kind of anywhere in there. Sure. It would make sense to me.
All right. Let's bring on to the next one. All right, Diego, do you want to jump on that at all, or what are your thoughts?
I feel like, on top of obviously Austin Hendrick being super talented, and I have him above Robert Hassel too, which is a different conversation in its own right. But I think a lot of the him going to Pittsburgh at 7, kind of stuff was just because it's kind of what everybody wants, right? Local kid, perfect scenario. Kind of like Ed Howard going to the White Sox at 11 would be just awesome because he's on the south side of Chicago, Mount Carmel kid. They passed on Alec Thomas twice in 2 years ago. But do I think Hendrick is definitely talented enough to be top 10? Yeah, for sure. But I have seen and heard Kjerstad, kind of like you have, Ralph. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I mean, they're kind of similar players in a way, both big time raw power, both lefties, hit tool concerns. Like if Austin Hendricks goes to college and becomes Heston Kjerstad, I probably wouldn't be surprised. So I don't know. We'll see.
It'll break my heart. sorry, Kjerstad, but I'm still a big Hendricks believer, to be honest with you. I actually have Hassel 1 spot ahead of him and Veen like 2 spots ahead of that, but I have them clustered really close, and it's splitting hairs for me. And I think as a site, we had Hendrick at 10. We had Veen in the top, I think top 5 or 6. And look at me not knowing my own rankings. And
I mean, I did them too.
we had Hassel at 12. So we had them all relatively close as well. So I'll agree with you there. Let's take a couple more questions and let's wrap this sucker up, or we're going a little bit longer than I had expected to. All right, where do you think Pete Crow Armstrong will go in the draft? I'm thinking early 20s, but I'll kick it over to Diego first, and then Brian.
Yeah, I think somewhere in the 18 to like 24, 23 range is interesting. Cardinals, Brewers are names we've heard connected to Pete Crow Armstrong, which is really funny. It's not funny. It's just interesting because last year before the summer circuit started, a lot of places, a lot of publications had Armstrong as, the number 1 high school guy. And then Zach Veen kind of broke out. Austin Hendrick broke out. He didn't perform that well. Crow Armstrong didn't perform that well in the summer circuit. Even Robert Hassel's kind of seemingly jumped him over. Obviously, you have the 3 arms, too, that are ahead of him. So there's pedigree. I like Crow Armstrong, and I definitely think he's a first-round guy. So 18 to 23. I want to ask you guys, does it concern you at all that he's a Vandy commit on the signability issues? Vandy always seems to, pluck a guy. And I know, Ralph, you and I have talked about this, about potentially one of these Vandy outfielders making it to campus. So what do you guys think about that?
Robert Hassel, of course, is as well. Yeah, Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Ralph, you and I talked about this on the PCA video breakdown. I think just like, I mean, I certainly think that there's a chance. I think that PCA is a SoCal kid who's committed to Vanderbilt. Like that's kind of a profile that sometimes gets to school. But I think that I don't think you're talking about like I think PCA is going to be offered enough money to sign professional baseball. So like as long as he's got a reasonable signing number, then I think he's probably going to get signed. I don't know. He may be that 18 to 23. I agree with you that a lot of spots fit there for him, but we may see that kid be one of those ones who's drafted after people he's paid more than. So, could see him later on if someone floats him down there.
I think that's absolutely correct. All right. Let's say this is the last question. We'll wrap this sucker up afterward. Any chance Aaron Sabato cracks the first round? Man, he screams like one of those Twins picks, but maybe I'm wrong. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance. I think that he's a guy who the layoff obviously has not helped him, but given his the strength of his profile being based so much on analytics, being based so much on how hard he hits the baseball, then that's something that he could have continued to kind of prove and improve on even in cage sessions. So that's something that I think teams could have added to their data share on him over the course of the last couple months and still shot him up boards a little bit, even with no play.
Were you thinking Diego Sabato first round?
Just he's just definitely not a first round talent to me. But I agree with you on the Twins thing, Ralph. That this kind of looks like a Twins pick here. I mean, I think it's possible. It's possible he even goes in the comp round because it's undeniable the raw power this guy has. I mean, it's comparable, pure raw power wise, to Spencer Torkelson. So
yeah,
it might be more. It might be.
Yeah,
more.
it might be more.
I think it probably is. Haven't seen both of them. I think it's Sabato with raw power. It's just the hit tool quality, in terms of like his ability to manipulate the bat, adjust in at bat, even adjust swings to get to stuff. Like his hands, Torkelson's hands are just different than Sabato's.
Right. Right.
That's a big differentiator. But raw strength, I mean, dude, he is a fucking brute.
Yeah.
like he's legitimately, like I described him in my write-up as he's built like an NFL fullback. I mean, he looks like he should be taking on linebackers. I mean, that's what he looks like. Even his haircut, he's just like a classic like New York City, like ready to mash first baseman, right?
Right.
The baddest softball player on the NYPD force, So he kind of reminds me of. All right, let's just sort of wrap this sucker up here.
Hey, real quick,
Brian and I. Diego, thanks for joining me. Anything you wanted to cover, touch on, promote you guys have going on? Brian, I'll go over to you. I know you guys have some good stuff going on with PG.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're in the process of continuing to roll out all our reports. In a normal year, we'd have gone to 610 because that's roughly half a 40-round draft. But this year, we cut it off at 400 because, it was just easier to. So those are going to be done at the end of this week. We'll finish them off on Friday, and then obviously heading into next week, we have something pretty special planned that we can't announce quite yet that you should see later this week, and then obviously we'll have some stuff next week as well. So
stay tuned. Diego, hit me.
Nothing too crazy going on my end. Been doing a lot of work for PBR and scouting reports and stuff, just for Illinois, Wisconsin, but. Obviously stay tuned to Prospects Live, Ralph. I know we have something going on for draft day, live stream and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be crazy. I've never been this excited for a Major League Baseball draft in my entire life.
Yeah. It's the same thing. And I was saying to my wife tonight it's like, I'm not going to have any content now for like a year.
Yeah, me either. I don't know.
Legitimately, I may not have anything to cover. I'll get lucky and there's a fall league or maybe 2 fall leagues. Like, I gotta milk it, like this is
2021 draft board goes up on the 12th, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna put I'm already digging in on 2021 guys. The problem is I didn't get like hardcore cape looks in a lot of those guys, which is what I would have gotten this summer. I did get my Judge Fabian though, so I did
good.
I've seen my guys. But yeah, that's right. Diego mentioned it. Brian will be on that broadcast as well on MLB Draft Night. We will be competing with ESPN and MLB, despite the fact they're going to be using some of our videos. We'll be using our own videos. Eddie, Matt, myself, Brian, Chris Blessing from Baseball HQ, and a litany of other folks are going to be joining us over the course. I think we're going to stretch it out for 2 days. I happen to not be working that week. I might just jump on day 2 because we're going to have the second round in day 2. We really only get the first round of the competitive balance round in day 1. Which is a little unusual. We usually get the second round and obviously think the second CB as well on day 1, but not this year. So I might stretch it out the second day, hop on for a little bit, do one of these, break down some players and go from there. Let's talk some baseball. Hopefully next time we're talking to you guys, there might be an MLB agreement. Who knows? Be well, be safe. Have a good night.